Alright guys, the last NF I did was How Could You Leave Us? Cut straight through me, man. First time crying on camera, but really deep song. But we're here for NF Breathe. I was told it gets a little bit lighter from here on out, but either way, man, that one cut right through me. Let's get right to it.
Grew up in a small place, had to drive an hour just to see a movie. I'm a simple person, city life just doesn't move me. I'd rather be home with my grandparents and playing euchre. Didn't want to leave, but this dream's calling, I had to do it. I left my girl there, wish I would have done it different. And she was right when she told me that I don't never listen. I told her I would change a million times and never did it. Apologies don't mean a thing if you don't never fix it. I love what I do.
Yeah, I'm a small town person too. I live in a city right now where it's incredibly overpopulated, and I absolutely hate it. I love being in nature. I love not hearing semis. I personally love not being in a busy, bustling city. Some people like it, you know, do your thing. That's your choice. But yeah, I mean, he's talking about apologies. I mean, this rings so true. Apologies mean nothing if you don't change the behavior, if you don't make a genuine effort. You know, some people over apologize. And there's a difference between over-apologizing and then over-apologizing and also not really doing the inner work, if you will, to examine what you did wrong in that scenario. Why did I get angry at that person? Why did I lose my cool? Oh, there were these few different things that happened over the week that were stressful, and I carried that stress into the day, and then that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Certainly a self-analysis, and not even just an apology or an admittance to someone else that you did wrong. More important than that is an admittance to yourself and acknowledging that you did wrong. That's far more important than saying sorry to someone, in my opinion. I'm not saying don't say sorry, but I am saying if you don't do the self-examination and be real with yourself about where you failed in that situation, you know, I'm talking a little bit, but hey, that's what a lot of you are here for. Let's get going.
But it's not what I expected. This industry is not your friend. Well, that's my perspective. Sometimes the closest people to you make you feel protected, but those are the same people that hurt you most and leave you guessing. Some people say nobody's perfect, but expect perfection. How you supposed to find the answer if you don't ask the question? Sometimes I look into the mirror and talk to my reflection. When I go home and turn the music off, what am I left with?
Wow. Instead of pausing it, I could have just let NF finish his verse. He said the same thing, more or less. You have to ask the question to yourself.
We used to be close, but as time passed, we became disconnected. You never felt loved, and I always felt disrespected. Your family thought I was a joke, I was always defensive. They just wanted what was best for you, I just couldn't accept it. And hurting you was not a part of my plan or my intentions, but I was immature, I guess I had to learn some lessons. We grew apart and our lives went in different directions, and there's a lot of responsibilities that I neglected. I had a lot that was bottled inside, couldn't express it, and this pain won't leave. I can feel the depression, it's taking over my body, feels like I'm always stressing. Doctor told me I should sleep, but I'm always restless. I lay awake at night and think my thoughts.
Yeah, guys, if you, I mean, exactly what he's saying here. He kept it bottled up, And essentially what happens over time is if you bottle things up, you're going to lash out at the people closest to you, which also happens to be not the people closest to you. You're going to lash out at the people who love you back, who are willing to accept more crap than other people because they love you. I mean, so yeah, exactly what he's saying. If you internalize and bottle up problems and things that happen to you, you're going to end up hurting the people you love most. And that's the great irony of human turmoil. It's the old saying, hurt people hurt people. Well, rings true for me.
Thoughts are relentless. I need a moment to breathe. I need a moment to vent this. I seem to be the...
I bet there are some psychologists that probably have reacted to NF. I'm kind of curious what their take is and kind of how they analyze it. I would imagine in a somewhat similar vein as I do. But I mean, if you've gone through enough therapy, you're essentially an amateur psychologist. If you're open-minded enough in that therapy. Let's keep going.
The only person that I play pretend. And when I turn the music off, what am I really left with, huh?
Yeah, definitely a nice slower track. I'm noticing a lot in NF's older discography. He does have a lot of these tracks where he kind of they're slower and he's kind of, it almost sounds like he's playing around with sounds and like figuring out his sound as an artist. And oftentimes when you look at earlier people's work, there's a rapper, J. Cole. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him. But he did an interview and essentially said, if you look back at my earlier stuff, I was basically just biting Eminem. Biting meaning copying his style. I mean, it sounded like I was a mixed version of Eminem. And a lot of times when people first start making music, they have to develop their sound. Some people... I mean, there are some artists where they're just so talented that it comes out and it's incredibly unique, but even they have influences. So a lot of artists, when they start out, they're kind of trying to find their sound, and that's what I get with a lot of NF's earlier work and a lot of the non highlight tracks on a lot of these albums. And it does go to show. I mean, I'm really excited to get. Everyone keeps saying like, oh, when you get to this, when you get to that, with this album. I'm like, man, I can't wait. But I do want to do the journey because I want to understand the progression of him as an artist and a person. So let's finish this up. That might be it. Shout out to those who have stuck around, because you guys probably knew that was the end about a minute ago, and you stuck around to see what I was going to say at the end. Well, now I feel like I have to say something at the end for those who did stick around. But incredibly interesting. I mean, the way NF approaches it for me is just from a broad psychological and like somewhat philosophical perspective of I mean, you can tell he's done a lot of self-analysis. I don't know if he's done a lot of therapy. I saw one interview a long time ago where he said he was diagnosed with OCD, so I'm assuming he's at least sat down with psychiatrists. But he seems to be incredibly knowledgeable about himself, but also how humans relate to other humans and relate to tragedy and pain. And Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, to me, NF's music is more valuable than Drake's. Even though I've said, he's not a wordsmith, it's like, well, okay, that's my analysis of the complexity of his rhyme schemes. Does that invalidate him as an artist, him as a person, his experience, his ability to communicate these kinds of messages in such a great way and in profound way? I mean, I got slightly choked up at one reaction, and I couldn't post it due to copyright. So I might actually put that on Patreon, but that NF reaction, I've never had a response where like I legitimately couldn't talk. Like I was holding back tears, and it's like I ended the video at the end of it because I'm like, well, do you guys want to see, like just watch me cry for a minute and then like barely choke out some words and then have it be pretty much incoherent? I don't know. I ended it, and that's what happened. So it's in the past now, but I mean, yeah, his ability to communicate, and also really, I mean, it's the human struggle. It's not like, for me, no matter where you come from, no matter what your race is, your culture, your background, what country you're from, what part of the world, it's all about the human struggle, and how to overcome a lot of that. That's kind of my opinion on what NF's thing is. And God, in this day and age, I mean, it's kind of trendy to like talk about depression and anxiety and this and that, and that's why, I mean, I'll talk about it, but I try not to harp on too much, because we shouldn't glorify mental illness. I think there's a danger in glorifying it, because when you see it on Instagram and I've seen some like Instagram influencers like, oh, I'm depressed, and they get a bunch of likes, and it's like, look, I'm not saying don't reach out to people for help, but is that Instagram influencer posting on Instagram so that they can genuinely seek help and improve? I genuinely don't think so. I don't know these people personally, but I do think it's become very trendy to have mental health problems, and I do think it's exploited by some people. So I don't want you guys to take it out of context and say, oh, he's saying you should never talk about it, we should hush it down, we should not, like, no. NF, like, this is the whole point of NF to me, is like, let's talk about the human struggle. Yeah, I won't go on too much more here, guys, but I'm going to be doing Reel next, so feel free to check that out. Thank you. You guys rock, by the way. NF fans rock. Like, of all the, well, Ren fans are pretty cool too. I don't know. I just appreciate the loyalty that fans have to artists, because I've said things offhanded. I guess I'm not going to end the video. I've said things offhandedly to people, and not to people, on reactions. I've said some things offhandedly, like, oh, NF's not a lyricist, NF this, the. And I mean, the biggest thing, let's just take the example with NF. The biggest thing for NF's not a lyricist, people were like, well, you're at the beginning, you haven't seen his progression. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like, that's a fair point. I didn't see wordsmithing. But all right, I'll stop blabbering on, guys. You guys take care. Take care of your loved ones.